It was the late 70s. I was standing by the side of a road in Canada, a long way from home. I was wearing a blue circular uncrushable skirt and holding a sign that said, "The border." I was about to put my thumb out and hitchhike for the very first time, and I was terrified. Now, let me put this in context. You can probably tell from my accent that I was born and brought up in England. And England, thank you, yes, wonderful England. Yes, yes. I'll have a cup of tea with you afterwards. And England is a small place. If you drive from one end to the other, it will take you between 8 and 9 hours. If you go across the middle, after 2 hours, you're in the sea. The cars are small, the roads are small, the trucks are small. This was North America. The cars in the late 70s were enormous. The trucks were huge. I had never seen anything like it. The roads, 4 lanes in each direction. And then nice girls did not hitchhike. I knew that. Now, I've never really been a very nice girl, but even so, I was terrified. This was breaking new personal ground for me. And so I was scared beyond belief. Now, you might be asking what on earth put me in that predicament. Well, I blamed the whole thing on my mother. You see, my mother had a great love of adventure. But when she was 14 and growing up in Liverpool, the Second World War broke out, and England stayed at war until she was 20. And she said that her best adventuring years were swallowed up by bombs and fear and rationing. So she was determined to relive them vicariously now through me. So while other mothers were urging their only daughters to read, to study, to go to college, my mother was saying to me, "Geraldine, for goodness sake, you study far too hard. Put away those books and go out and party." So when I was 18, I went to her and I told her that I was going to go to the Olympic Games in Montreal with my boyfriend. And then we were going to hitchhike from there to New York and fly back to England from there. Now, on that occasion, I wanted my mother to be like other mothers. I wanted her to forbid me to go, so I wouldn't have to. But this was my mother. She said, "Darling, let me help you pack." And that's how I found myself standing by the side of a road in Canada with my thumb out and my knees shaking. But at least I had my boyfriend standing next to me. He'll keep me safe, I thought. My boyfriend, Ivor, was very respectable. He was 5 years older than me. He traveled extensively, and he explained the rules of the road. "Geraldine," he said, "you always wear good clothes. That way, you get a better class of ride." He says, "You never get in a car where you're outnumbered. And when you're in the car, you always chat to the driver. Because that way, you build up a rapport. And if you do those things, you're less likely to be murdered." Murdered? I have a vivid imagination. I could just see my mutilated, murdered body being tossed out of a car on the outskirts of some exotic American city like Akron. I prayed, "Lord, please watch over me." And then I wanted to thank every car that whizzed past. But finally, an ancient two-door, rusted-out old Chevy skidded to a halt. Now, I could see through the open passenger window that the driver was alone. That was good. But he had long, unkempt hair, a missing front tooth, and dirt etched in the deep lines of his face. And he said, "I can take you 40 miles. And Ivor said, "Thank you, sir," and got in the back seat with the backpacks and then whispered to me, "You get in the front. You're good at talking. Build a rapport." So despite my misgivings, I had to get in. I reached for the seatbelt. It wasn't there. "Oh, it's no use going for that," said the man. "That dropped off months ago." And then he started that car. Well, it looked like a rusted-out old jalopy, but he clearly had something powerful under that hood because we went from 0 to 80 in seconds. And he carried on driving at that speed, and he only had one hand on the wheel because with the other, he was chain smoking. And he was lighting the new cigarette with a burning butt of the old one. And he didn't have an ashtray. Well, he didn't actually need an ashtray, because right in front of the gear stick there was a rusted out hole that went down to the road. And that's where he was flicking his ash and the still burning butts of the cigarette. Well, I was focused on that hole. I was waiting for a spark to hit the engine and the whole car to explode. And I was just thinking, there are more ways to be killed hitchhiking than I'd ever imagined. When the man said to me, "I've got a glass eye." "Would you like to see it?" And he took out his eye and he put it on my shoulder. Well, I froze. I didn't want that eye going to my lap or down by my feet. I didn't want the man diving for it, particularly not as we were going so fast. And then I slowly turned my head. And I wasn't sure what to say. What is the protocol when you're eyeball to eyeball with an eyeball? And then I turned my head a little more slowly, a bit further round, because I wanted to see what Ivor's reaction was going to be. But his eyes were closed. He wasn't in the death seat. He was taking a nap. Well, I finally managed that. That's fascinating. And that seemed to placate the man, because he didn't say anything else until he dropped us off about 15 minutes later. But I was very grateful that from that point onwards, he kept both eyes on the road, even though they were 3 feet apart. I was so grateful to get out of that car. I watched it until it disappeared into a speck in the distance, but all that time, I felt that glass eye, now back in the man's head, staring at me through the rearview mirror. And then I had the oddest thought. I remembered something my mother had told me while she was helping me pack. She said, "Darling," she said, "don't worry, I prayed. So everywhere you go on this trip, you'll be safe. Because the Lord, He'll keep His eye on you." Thank you.